My wife's cousin's murderer was released in the deal. In the morning after the government voted, his widow called my wife. I was in Hebron at the time. I came back later in the afternoon and spoke to her. Ronit Sasson was extremely angry and hurt and filled with pain. Her husband's murderer had spent 6 years in jail. No one consulted with her, with their family. They were amongst those who petitioned the High Court against the deal. When she spoke with me and cried and was filled with anger and pain, and I felt her pain and anger and could only empathize with her, in my mind what I was thinking, Gilad's coming home alive. No, I couldn't help her husband. On October 18th, he came home. This is an amazing story, if you ask me. It was one of those moments in Israel when I think most Israelis felt proud to be Israeli. No, Netanyahu surprised us. He took his values and his principles of not negotiating with terrorists, and he wrote the book on the issue, literally, and he put them on the scales. And on the other side of the scale, he put one Israeli soldier. And the principle that we have a covenant between the state and the people, which enables us to have the people's army that we have. I know as a father with a son in the army, it would have been really difficult. It's difficult for any parent, I think, to send their kids off to the army. It would have been so much more difficult for me to send my kid to the army if I knew that we left Gilad Shalit behind. So it's a remarkable story. It's one for me that gives me optimism, because while I don't share much of Netanyahu's political beliefs, he surprised us here. We need Netanyahu to be the man who's going to deliver us peace with the Palestinians and not just Gilad Shalit. And I believe, and I hope and pray, and I'm working so that he will surprise us again. Thank you very much. Thank you. If I just a couple of words about Gilad Shalit, because I didn't say anything about him. Probably the other most amazing thing about this story is that this kid came home sane. He came back home positive, happy, looking forward, not filled with pain and anger. He's not bitter. He's living his life. He's working as a sports correspondent for Yediot Ahronot. He had a television for almost the whole time he was in captivity. He saw sporting events mostly with his captors. He spent most of his time doing that. He had several books that they had given him, math books and physics books. They had given him one book about Islam in English and told him if he converts to Islam, they would free him. He ate a lot of his meals with the people who were holding him. There was always someone who spoke English or Hebrew. He could understand Arabic, but he never really spoke it with them. He avoided conversations with them about politics, keeping mostly to sports. For 3 years, he had a radio, and he received 2 Israeli radio stations, the Negev radio station and Galei Tzahal, the Voice of Israel Army radio. He knew about the campaign for him. He heard his parents on the radio. He knew about current events. He heard on every program on radio how many days he was in captivity. He was moved about 3 times during the period he was in captivity. He was underground the whole time. He had seen sunlight once. He had gone and wounded by that grenade and had 8 pieces of shrapnel embedded in his arm. When he got released, he went through a 7-hour surgery to have those 8 pieces of shrapnel removed, which had been embedded into the bone and his nerves. He's still doing physical therapy to regain full use of his hands, but he's feeling well. He was treated well most of the time. He had sufficient food. In his last 2 months in captivity, he stopped eating. And it wasn't a hunger strike. You know that vitamin D deficiency from lack of sun causes clinical depression, and Gilad Shalit had become clinically depressed. One of the manifestations of clinical depression is losing your appetite. He had no appetite. He couldn't eat. One of the reasons perhaps why Hamas made the deal in the end was because they thought that maybe he would die. The assessment is that 2 more months in captivity, he probably would have died from malnutrition. He came back very thin and very pale. We had seen him, we had visited him a month after he came back, and he was looking very post-traumatic. We had lunch with him 2 weeks ago? 2 weeks ago in Nahariya. He's, you know, my 18-year-old son, my youngest son, was with us at the meal, and after we dropped off Gilad at his car, my son said, I felt like hugging him. This is the kind of emotion that this, I mean, he's 26-year-old, but he looks like a kid, and he's a kid, and he became the kid of every single one of us during those years he was in captivity. I think around the world, in Jewish homes, he was our kid.